So in the previous video, we learned how we could combine the index function and the match function together to mimic the VLOOKUP function, but allowing us to overcome the limitation of the VLOOKUP function of requiring our lookup value being in the leftmost column of our table. Because currently in this index and match formula that we created last video, this formula would still work if we change the ID column to the second, third, or fourth column. But to retrieve the name, score, and grade using the index and match, we still manually had to go into each of these formulas and change the column number. Well, luckily, we can edit this formula to include another match function to make our column num argument dynamic. And usually when you're dealing with data sets, you might be inclined to move columns around. And if you just use the VLOOKUP function or use the regular index and match formula, we would have to come back into each cell and edit the formula. So to overcome that, we can use another match function to return a numeric value for the column number argument within the index function. So let's start editing this formula so you can get a better understanding. So we need to delete this 2, and still within our column number argument for our index function, we need to insert another match function. And for our lookup value for this match function, we are going to select the cell that says name. Because for this formula, we are trying to return the name associated to this ID number. And we already have the ID number as the lookup value for our first match. But what our second match is doing is trying to match and locate our column headings within our table. So for our lookup array, we can put comma. We can select our column headings within our table to match our name label over here. And I'm going to press F4 on my keyboard to make this range an absolute reference, since our column labels are going to remain constant, and then put comma 0 for an exact match. Then we can click enter, and Excel is saying that there's a typo in my formula, and it's just because I left out one last parentheses. So do you want to accept this correction? Yes, I do. So now in this formula, we have an index function and 2 match functions. So now if I copy this formula down the rest of our cells, we are still getting all the correct values without having to go in and change the column number. So if I change this ID number to 118, we can see that this ID refers to the name of Colby. He scored a 67 and received a D, which is right here in our table. So with combining all these functions together, we overcame the limitation of having the lookup value being in the most left column, and we didn't have to change our column number for our name, score, and grade. Because you can see in our second match formula, the lookup value is L5, which is grade. And then for our score formula, it is L4 for our score, and it's matching our column headers within our table to produce the column number. So I know this formula is a little bit more confusing, but it's very important to learn because it's a lot more efficient and dynamic if we make changes to our table.